Welcome back. This is World Talks here on TVP World. I'm Anna Kalczynska. The Georgian government has postponed the bid for European Union until 2029, a move which suggests essentially a shift away from EU integration, despite public declarations to the contrary. Now, starting May 16, citizens of 17 additional mainly African countries will be able to enter Georgia without a visa, a move that is triggering serious debate about the country's geopolitical trajectory. As Georgia opens its door wider to new partners, questions are intensifying over whether is it turning its back on its European aspirations and edging closer to policies that align with Russian interests. To explore the implications of this shift, we're joined now by Mchedlishvili, Associate Professor, European University in Tbilisi. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you for accepting. So, what is the main reason behind Georgia's decision to expand its visa-free entry policy to citizens of more than 17 additional countries?
Okay, so that's a very important question, and there was some misunderstanding, and the Minister of Interior actually 2 days ago issued a statement about that. So the regulation according to which the citizens of the 17 countries might enter Georgia is in force since 2015 for about 10 years. Now the Georgian authorities decided to tighten the regulations. And now these citizens of the 17 countries, mainly African countries, and what caused the most outcry in Georgia, Afghanistan, with its obnoxious Taliban regime at the moment, they might enter Georgia and stay there only if they have the invitation or residence permit in such countries as United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, mostly Gulf states, Kuwait, Oman, 6 states, Qatar as well. So 6 countries. If the citizens of 17 African Asian countries have the invitation to these Gulf states, then on the way they might enter Georgia on the way to their destinations, because there are flights to Tbilisi from certain countries. So this is the actual regulation. Very unfortunately, so many people in Georgia, opposition outlets, they immediately picked it up. Created a narrative as if Georgia is closing ties or has the rapprochement with the African Asian countries at the expense of Europe. But in this particular case, that was not the case. This is not that story. On a more general tone, of course, there are many questions and many concerns regarding Georgian interaction to the European Union. You mentioned the statement of the Prime Minister, which is still holds true and is concerning. But that particular issue is actually kind of non-issue. It is, for me, it is indicative that when it became clear that that was a misunderstanding or maybe misinterpretation of what happened, or false interpretation. Unfortunately, not a single opposition leader or personalities on social media actually denounced it or issued a statement disclaiming it. Only some outlets, including opposition outlets, said it on their web pages and on their printed editions and so forth. So that's actually kind of the story.
All right. So you say that given that some of the listed countries are dealing with political instability, obviously, and conflicts, the risk of applications, increased asylum applications or illegal migration through Georgia is rather limited.
Well, actually, the move was designed to tighten this regulation, to make it more complicated. Only if they have visa or residence permit in the 6 Gulf states, only in this case the people can enter Georgia, stay there for some time.
All right.
So that was intended. Yeah. Formally, there was nothing political to spin here, but that was given this either false interpretation or misunderstanding. Well, what if we can talk about general problems of rapprochement with the European Union? These problems unfortunately remain. The protests are still ongoing, but also there is also nuances and more to these issues as well.
Well, because the European Union has not responded to the planned legislation yet, but there are concerns that migrants from developing countries might pour into the EU through Georgia. Should this fear become more real, the bloc could lift the existing visa-free travel for Georgians to its member states. And then how would that influence the Georgian public, namely in the context of national security and EU aspirations?
Well, obviously, if this happens, that idea was aired by the German ambassador in the recent interviews. But, well, very, very, very hopefully it will not materialize. Well, it will take certain steps, certain consensus is required, and it has to pass several stages of European bureaucracy. Of course, it will be a major blow on Georgian aspirations because now, it is very easy to get used to normal good things. For about 8 years, Georgian citizens enjoyed, and now we take it in our strides, we take it for granted. And, sometimes we don't even realize what advantages we have to some of our neighbors, post-Soviet countries. And then if that wonderful benefit is gone, obviously that will be like the major blow, and obviously it will not sit in into the Georgian public. On the other hand, my general perception and my general opinion is that this move on the part of European Union will not be very judicious, and it will definitely not strengthen Georgia's European integration. It will not get Georgia close to Europe. If the policy of the European Union, European structures, is to get Georgia closer to Europe, I believe that policies should be more well thought out.
What lessons were learned from Georgia's earlier decision to add China to the visa-free list in 2023? And can we expect similar trends now?
Well, the move to China, this pivot to China, one can name it this way, obviously that was a response on what was perceived unfair criticism on the part of the US administration and certain circles of the European Union. Well, again, by itself, nothing wrong with having relations with China, obviously, and visa-free. Of course, it is a boon. It will also benefit the Georgian economy, all the more since that this, the middle corridor is gradually materializing. Obviously, there will be place for Georgia in this regard. So, but my concern, as well as the concern of many people in Georgia, outside Georgia, that might come at the expense of the democratization and rapprochement with the European Union. So China should not be replacing or supplanting the United States or Europe. It could be an addition. It could be, of course, widening our geographic scope because of our favorable geographic location. Well, favorable in terms of geopolitical, geoeconomic project, but sometimes not so favorable given the proximity and given the common border with Russia. So, but in this case, taking advantage of the geographic location and having nice relations with China, of course, it is a good, but as long as it doesn't come at the expense of democratization in our domestic, I would say, rapprochement with the European countries and resembling more and more European countries, as was the case until very recently.
So coming back to the legislation which enters May 16th, some experts were talking to TVP World were explaining that this is a move by Georgia to look for investment in the region. And so this is a possibility of detouring some economic cooperation from the European Union and from Russia to this region. How about this explanation? Do you see a possibility of a raise in investment and in economic cooperation here?
Yes, the recent trip to the United Arab Emirates garnered, landed a $6 billion investment to Georgia, which is by itself, of course, nothing wrong with that. Obviously, the more ties, given again our geographic location, so at the southeastern edge of Europe, close to the Middle East, so generally Central Eurasia, so next to Turkey, so by the Black Sea, obviously gives strategic opportunities to Georgia. Again, everything is nice. Diversification of our economic ties and investment ties is very good, as long as it comes at the expense of our domestic policies. So Georgia, was moving in the direction of Europeanization. 2014 association agreement, 2017 visa-free. Of course, that was the implication, that was the important markers and watershed events, and it was the benefit well-deserved, well-earned. So now this general route is in question. So therefore, it's not about like possible investments, but this possible investment might create some economic opportunities, also economic growth, and within this growth, it will be easier for the authorities to divert from the European path. That's what is concerning, not investments by itself and like economical development by itself.
I see. So what is the current political situation in Tbilisi?
Well, it is calmer. Protests continue. Yesterday marked the 150th day of the protest. There was the amount of people were more than usual, but there are luckily no incidents anymore. Very unfortunately, some people are getting apprehended by the police or were given like far-fetched fines for just like crossing the street like improperly or like sitting on the
On the pavement,
at the street on a highway and something similar. Well, but you know, these low-intensity protests continue. Also, there are signs that certain countries do recognize like Georgian like government and Georgian like leadership, particularly neighboring countries. Well, and these authorities try to present it as as recognition. The recent visit of the OSCE chief, as well as participating in Georgia in the Antalya Forum when there was a joint conference with the of our foreign minister with Armenian and Azerbaijani counterpart, visit of the president to Azerbaijan, yesterday's visit like to the funeral of the Pope, so that the authorities try to present that, you know, gradually the war comes to terms with them, and these like, as they presented, unfair attitude and double standards toward Georgia, so is like fizzling away gradually.
All right, so keeping our fingers crossed for the Georgian opposition, and thank you so much for joining us today. George Mchedlishvili, Associate Professor at European University in Tbilisi, was our guest this morning. Thank you. And thank you for watching World Talks, and please stay tuned to TVP World for more news and more features to come. Thank you so much.